and Telnaes. She's no stranger to Idea City. She appeared with a great pod of cartoonists back in 2008, some people from New Yorker and so on. One of the few women in this highly competitive field, Anne was only the second woman to receive the Pulitzer Prize for political cartooning in 2001. She's a cartoonist for the Washington Post, where she also does animations for the newspaper's website and produces a blog. Anne's cartoons tend to be quite liberal, thankfully. She's an artist who bravely criticizes the actions and words of powerful public figures, taking stands on complex, divisive issues, thereby affirming the editorial cartoon as a potent means of expressing opinion and illuminating issues of the day. Do we condone threats of violence toward individuals because of what they say or draw, regardless of how offensive the words or images are? She answers, no. Today, Anne will be addressing the issues of Charlie Hebdo, freedom of speech, and women in cartooning. Come on out here, man.
Madame, I offer this gift to you.
Oh, thank you. As you can see by how tall I am, I'm one of those very dangerous cartoonists. I'm also a woman cartoonist, in case you haven't noticed. I don't speak for all my female colleagues, but I'm pretty sure most consider themselves a cartoonist first, not just a woman cartoonist. We're editorial cartoonists. We have opinions, and we draw about the same topics as our male colleagues. In my case, I've commented on foreign policy, government surveillance, campaign finance, gay rights, the environment, gun control, and so on. Not just women's issues. Which doesn't mean that we don't have a particular passion for issues which affect women directly. Pay equality, equal representation in government, sexual violence and harassment, and reproductive health issues. We can relate to these issues. We've been there. Granted, in different degrees, depending on where we live, or where we were born, or our skin color, but we've been there. Because of our own life experiences, we might offer a different perspective in our work than our male colleagues do, which is a good reason for diversity in cartooning. This is a famous American painting of the writing of the Constitution, which conveniently forgot the women. As you've been hearing from previous presenters, the Charlie Hebdo killings have had a profound effect on the entire editorial cartooning community because of the debate that it's ignited about free speech and whether there should be limits to what we're allowed to draw. What I'm going to be talking about here is how much women cartoonists have a great deal at stake in this question, and how putting limits on images and subject matter will impact their ability to create powerful cartoons which challenge governments and societies over inequalities and sexism. I was a presenter here at Idea City in 2008. And back then, many people were talking about the Danish cartoon controversy. As was said previously, 12 cartoonists were asked by a Danish newspaper to draw the prophet Muhammad, which resulted in condemnation by Muslim groups, worldwide protests, and some turning very violent and resulting in numerous people being killed. The publication of those cartoons also started an intense debate among cartoonists about whether or not there should be limits in speech and cartooning. If there should be a red line somewhere so a situation like the Danish cartoons wouldn't be repeated. But it was repeated this year, and this time in Paris, and there were 5 cartoonists among the dead. I was stunned when I heard the news early that morning on January 8th. It isn't like cartoonists haven't been threatened or killed before for what they've drawn. My colleagues and I have heard about plenty of cartoonists that have been imprisoned or attacked or just disappear. But we're a pretty small community worldwide, and to lose that many all at once was staggering. And while cartoonists are usually targeted by repressive governments and humorless dictators, these murders were committed by gunmen with links to Al-Qaeda who claim that the Charlie Hebdo cartoons mocked their religion. Once the shock of the killings wore off, several commentators and writers in the media began to question the content of the cartoons for being racist and having inflamed an already tense situation among the minority Muslim communities in France. When the American literary organization PEN decided to give Charlie Hebdo their Freedom of Expression Courage Award, 6 prominent writers declined to attend the ceremony, and over 100 PEN members signed a letter condemning the decision. Cartoonists were also divided about whether or not Charlie Hebdo had crossed a line in their cartoons. The acclaimed graphic artist Joe Sacco questioned Charlie Hebdo's satire and made the point that they had even fired one of their own writers in 2008 for an anti-Semitic column. In his speech at the George Polk Awards, Gary Trudeau, the creator of Doonesbury, also criticized Charlie Hebdo for, quote, wandering into the realm of hate speech, close quote, and characterizing their cartoons as punching downward at the disempowered and disenfranchised. However, the graphic novelist Marjane Satrapi felt that talking about the satire of Charlie Hebdo was the wrong conversation to have, and that people have the right to have a different point of view and to provoke. After having been myself involved with the debates about limits of free speech ever since the Danish cartoons, it strikes me at how many of my female colleagues, especially the ones that come from conservative societies, tend to be very determined and resolute in a cartoonist's right to speak freely. Why is that? Why would women, that one could argue, could also be described as disempowered and disenfranchised in many parts of the world, want to defend the absolute right of freedom of expression? It's not as though women are not aware that images can offend and words can discriminate. Women live in a world of offending images and discrimination. Women's bodies are exploited in both liberal and conservative societies. Women are disempowered through laws in many countries. If you're not familiar with this creator, Willis from Tunis, you should be. She's excellent. Oops, did we miss one? I think we missed some. Okay, well, let's go to the next part then. Women must navigate social taboos. And have their rights bargained away by governments which are supposed to represent them. Women are victims of violence and abuse that governments ignore and societies silently accept. So back to the question of why women cartoonists are among the most vocal defenders of absolute freedom of expression, defending even the right to draw cartoons which are vulgar or in poor taste or sexist. And I've seen plenty of those throughout my career, but I can confirm that I have never felt the need to kill a cartoonist for drawing one. I have made snide comments and rolled my eyes, though. We want the ability, the tools, to speak out against discrimination and inequality, and we're willing to deal with offensive images and the stupid speech in order to protect everyone's right to freely express themselves. Because once red lines are allowed to be drawn, and each group decides what is sacred, this is where all cartoonists will end up. And because of the unequal status in many countries and societies, women will feel those limitations first. I'm going to close with this image that Dan showed you earlier. As he mentioned, this cartoon was created by a 28-year-old artist and activist from Iran. She was just recently sentenced to 12 years in prison for drawing this. It was her way of criticizing the Iranian parliament for a law restricting access to contraception and other types of birth control. Athena was using satire to hold her government accountable for their actions and is being severely punished for mocking these politicians. She was using her universal right to express an opinion freely by speaking out against a policy which Amnesty International has described as setting women's rights back decades in Iran. A cartoonist using satire and offensive images to criticize her government's action is imprisoned for 12 years for expressing an opinion. Thank you for your attention.